Zelda Champions Ballad DLC. Serial, you actually reviewed this, and everybody else has played it a fair amount. This is the big story-based DLC they've been teasing with a new dungeon, all this new stuff, and it seems like all that anybody's talking about is Link as a motorcycle.
Well, I mean, can you blame us?
I mean, it was prominently featured in the trailer, and it's basically the thing you're working toward for most of that DLC.
It's one of those things where I wish I hadn't seen that in the trailer and hadn't had that spoiled for me, but at the same time, it's really cool. And now that I know it's there, like, I plan on saving some stuff back to finish the dungeon so I can get that motorcycle and then
get some use out of it.
Actually use it, because I've done all the side quests, so I almost don't have a reason to use the motorcycle.
So, Serial, is,
cool. Anyway.
Is the motorcycle the most exciting piece of that puzzle, or is it just kind of overshadowing anything because it's so wacky?
I think it is sort of overshadowing a lot of it just because it kind of breaks the game in a way, just because you can get everywhere so fast that the game can't really keep up sometimes, where it'll just,
technically. Yeah,
it'll just start loading randomly, which I never experienced otherwise in the middle of a Zelda game. No. But it's definitely a really cool thing that maybe if you had one of your issues with the game was how slow you had to traverse and how little horses kind of were, like how marginal they were.
Yeah.
This definitely fixes that because you can summon it in most places, not super high up. I know Kyle was interested in doing some 6 stunts with it and wasn't able to summon it anywhere. But
you can't summon in Death Mountain, which is like freaking ridiculous.
You cannot drive it into lava.
You cannot drive it into lava.
Yeah, we tried. We have a 6 stunt video that me, Kyle, and Leo.
Do we mention that we did some 6 stunts?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Stunts of 6.
I recommend watching it.
So,
what do you mentioned that like it makes horses were marginalized to begin with, and now this makes horses even less of a factor.
They're basically extinct at this point.
They're
you can
dead.
run them over with the motorcycle.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have it. This patch also included horse armor that lets you summon a horse directly to it, but like 4 out of 5 times I've tried to use it, it has not worked. So
really?
It's just like the motorcycle. Some places you can't summon it, and it seems even more limited than the motorcycle.
Yeah. So why would you ever summon a horse? Because like every time I used a horse, it was for like maybe a minute at most, because I just saw a thing in the distance and it's like, well, my horse isn't gonna jump off this cliff with me, so see you later, horse, and I would just glide over to wherever. It seems like they have 2 things that are both of completely different uses of just, here's this motorcycle that'll completely make everything else obsolete, and here's a horse that'll, I guess, is useful sometimes.
Kyle, what do you make of the fact that I think it was GDC at one of those postmortems talking about Breath of the Wild, they were showing early concept art, and one of the early pieces of concept art was goofy ass 90s morning cartoon Link on a motorcycle, and they used it as like a punchline.
Yeah.
And now they end up putting it in the game.
I love that it's there. It's like, I know we're really harping on this motorcycle thing, but I mean, like,
there's a motorcycle in Zelda.
It's crazy. I mean, it's like, it's insane. It fits aesthetically, but it also just does not fit at all. Like,
I'm going to go more towards the latter.
Well, I mean, I'm saying the design of it looks like it fits in that universe, but it even revs like a motorcycle. You got to feed it like bananas and apples to make it run.
Motorcycle.
You can feed it whatever.
like the DeLorean?
Yeah. You just throw whatever in it and it fills it up depending on what
But
you
now that it's in there, the next Zelda is going to have something like that, right? Like some
I
kind of
don't know,
motorcycle or some kind of craft.
They just call it the Epona, and like it's on the cover, and it's just him and with a little sidecar and Zelda's in it.
God, I can only hope.
The rest of the stuff outside of the motorcycle, like the actual package here, are you impressed by it? What's the overall read?
I think it's a pretty good sort of like closer to like that game. I think it acts as sort of a good way to revisit a lot of the stuff you may have missed. So a lot of those. So it's basically like it's 16 new shrines, I think, overall. And the first 4, it's this sort of survival trial similar to what they did with Trials of the Sword, where you get a thing called the One-Hit Obliterator. Which is, I'm sure it spends a lot of time on that name.
Treehouse are masters of localization.
Right.
Yeah.
So you grab it and it reduces your heart to 1/4 heart.
Also, the real dicky move is I don't want to tip my hand, but I had a very tough time going through this section. And eventually I was like, wait a minute, can I just fill my hearts back up? And they let you eat stuff. So I ate like my heartiest meal, got all those yellow hearts, and then I was like, here we go, baby. And they let you eat it, but then when you get back in the world, the hearts just
That's the first thing I tried too, because like you get the one-hit obliterator, and even my first reaction was like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, I don't want to take this job, and I immediately ate like a heart fill, and it goes up, then it goes right back down,
and you lose that meal, which
exactly.
Nintendo.
So those early trials, I think. I was a little conflicted because they feel like they capitalize on that of just like, here's a trial where you can't make any mistakes. And one of them I thought was pretty cool. Like there's this sort of obstacle course where you have to sort of, I'm not going to spoil the solutions, but it's basically like it's less puzzly and more like, can you do this sort of trial? And I thought that one was cool. But the rest of them, I just feel like here are some normal puzzly things where if you just happen to make some random mistake, like there's one where you grab, you basically use magnetism to like grab certain objects with a bowl. And that one felt like, okay, this is interesting enough of a concept of its own, but just the idea of like if some physics thing happens and I end up getting hurt, I just have to start over. That felt like a little frustrating.
It's all just so soft and mushy, which I think is a thrilling part of Breath of the Wild overall. But yeah, it seems like their higher end shrine design in these, it just leans into that in a weird way. Or there's like one where it's like a sea of spikes on the ground and you have to have platforms in, like they're constantly undulating, so if you try and jump and it just syncs up in a weird way, like when you get like nullified on a trampoline, suddenly it's just like, okay, now I didn't make that jump and then I fall into the pits and then I have to start all the way over because there's no checkpoints in these shrines.
Yeah.
I found those a little more annoying. Where the one you mentioned, Surya, with the bowl and then like grabbing those, I actually kind of like that one. So maybe it was like kind of a weird, like,
I guess
has their own opinion.
Yeah.
But I think that added challenge of like, I have not only one heart, I have like a quarter of a heart.
Yeah,
so it's
I
like
can't
there's
get her
no
by
way I
anything.
can do anything.
Have you guys had a tough time with this? I played it on a plane for like all told probably 4 hours. I didn't finish those. It was insanely
Did you
hard.
do the trial of the sword?
No,
Because that's way harder.
well, I'm sure, but still, like,
But I think maybe getting through that maybe like helped me, like, because like I actually really liked the combat building up to all those dungeons because it made it way more intense, and it was also the checkpoints were nice enough where it wasn't like a total wash if you die. Because in the trial of the sword, you can lose like 4 hours of progress like that.
I know, but saying it's less hard than a super hard thing, I think like this
It is hard.
It is
I've
hard,
seen.
but I definitely agree with you guys with the shrines being like unnecessarily frustrating. But the combat I liked because it ramped up the intensity in a significant way, and it's really satisfying to hit a white bokoblin with that one hit obliterator when it usually takes like a good 10 minutes to take those.
But I'd
guys
argue
out.
it's less satisfying when you're in the woods trying to take out all these guys and you're down to one, and then just a swarm of bats hit you from the back.
Yeah,
and
Well, then
die.
you got to use your electricity arrows. What are you doing?
I was gonna say
BS.
use arrows. Just use arrows on
Yeah.
all those. Like I took out a ton of dudes with just like explosive arrows and bombs and stuff. And
Yeah.
like, I used the obliterator on the big guys, but arrows helped save my life.
Okay, I'm not having a good time with this DLC just because I'm not into fetch quests and the super hard combat of Breath of the Wild. Like that's just not appealing.
So have
I'm
you,
in it
have
for
you
the
gotten
adventure.
past the one hit?
I haven't. It's so hard.
Okay,
Once you pass that, you'll be in good shape.
Well, that's
but-
what I want to
right,
know.
yeah.
Like, what is
So
past that?
after you do that one trial, it opens up a little bit more and basically gives you sort of a miniature version of the game's main quest, where it's here are 4 little locations around marked on your map, and you go there, and they give you sort of these 3 photos of like, here's where the thing is, figure out where it is, and sometimes when you get there, you'll have a challenge where it's like they'll tell you like, oh, they'll sort of throw you riddles of like, do this, and then you might do this. So you'll have to figure out like, what are they talking about?
Golem's on the set over
Right.
here. Oh, my God.
And so you'll have to figure out some puzzle to get the shrine to come out. And then those aren't like one hit.
Yeah, the
sort of-
obliterator's gone by that
Yeah.
point.
So
So, you can-
you're
Thank
just
God.
free to like explore and figure that stuff out. And I think that was maybe my favorite part of the DLC. It's just like that sort of like do-it-yourself exploration where it's like like most other games would just say, here's the marker, go here, get like those just basically indicate every part of the quest.
Yeah.
And I like that in Zelda. It's a theme of that entire game of just you sort of have to figure out more of yourself, so it feels more satisfying when you finally get.
But
through
it's
that
still in the
stuff.
same vein as the memories system, right?
No, you actually instead of looking at like a landscape photo, you're actually looking at a map. So you can just kind of line up the spot on the
Right.
map.
So it's like it's zoomed in enough to where it's like, okay, well, I see a river of red, so that's lava, and there's a blue river, so it's like I need to look on my map for a place where those two intersect.
See, that's not fun exploration for me. Like
That-
the fun exploration of Zelda is going wherever you want and just seeing what's around the next hill, not like this fine tune of like, okay, this might line up with this area there. Let me scour the map again and again and again.
I will say that's probably my least favorite part of it too, is like hunting on the map to like, where is my next location outside like that. However, I will say, even though that wasn't my favorite part, that's like a small part of what this DLC is.
Okay.
Like, because then you're going on an adventure and you're doing things like, sliding down a mountain on your shield, or you're fighting different enemies. Like,
Right, so-
they're kind of like having you engage with the world again
That
in
sounds good.
areas that you might not have gone to. Because there were several moments where I was like on these quests and I was like, I don't remember this part of the world. Like, well, and then I was did they add stuff to the world? It's like, no. Like, this is just the world. It's so big that I didn't encounter this stuff, even though I spent 100 hours with the game already.
I think that's a cool thing too, is like making you go back to the Great Plateau, where it's like I feel like I had scoured that place pretty well, but even going up for those shrines, like I don't remember this location at all. You forget how big and interesting that game world is. Yeah. But the dungeon itself, without spoiling things, or the story, or like the dungeon overall, is it on par? Is it better than the other dungeons?
I mean, I sort of, that was sort of one of my sticking points with Zelda, was that like the dungeons didn't feel super satisfying just because they were so short. And this one I feel like is maybe not, is even within those dungeons not my favorite one, just because it feels like it is more about these closed off puzzles instead of like one interlocking thing where it's like, oh, now that you've done this, now you can go in here and you have to go back and forth. All the puzzles in this one are more isolated, and they all play with different concepts, but it felt like here's the first puzzle of a thing that we might iterate on, and then they don't iterate. It's just like they just do one little trick and then you're done with the dungeon. And it also kind of like you fight all the bosses again, which is kind of frustrating because they don't necessarily like they change your loadout basically, so you have like limited swords or whatever, and that kind of like reinforced the idea that I don't like the bosses in Zelda's
that lightning boss.
Yeah, because like it feels
still hard. It turns out.
I think I would have preferred sort of the more puzzly approach of like, oh, you have to throw, like in Wind Waker, you have to throw the grappling hook on the top of the arena, and then go from there. And then, but here it feels like you don't have to figure out the puzzly stuff. You just, if you're good enough with the sword play and you have enough tricks up your sleeve, like the Urbosa's lightning thing is a thing I abused a lot. It feels like you can brute force those bosses in ways that don't feel satisfying, and so having to do all those bosses again was kind of like was a bummer.
But overall, I mean, are we happy with Zelda's DLC? Impressed? Underwhelmed?
Yeah, like the shrines themselves,
I think is a good. Yeah.
Underwhelmed?
Yeah. I and it could have been part of my expectation going into it that I wanted like new They also promised new story, which we haven't really gone into much, but I found the story elements to be unsatisfying. It didn't add to the story. It just kind of like reinforced like the character of the champions. Like you got a little bit more insight into them, but they're not like characters that I was particularly like, oh, I want to know more about that eagle guy,
Yeah, don't play dumb. You know that effort.
Well, I don't know. It's confusing because there's like two eagles. There's the one in the present, and there's the one in the past. And so this one's Rivali, right? Is the one. Yeah. So
Rivali's
like,
game.
So it is ready.
I was kind of underwhelmed by the story. I liked having a lot of new shrines. That was really cool. And and the dungeon boss I actually really liked a lot, especially having played like the whole game and done every shrine in the game. I thought it was a very cool surprise for the final boss.
Cool.
It is weird because that last batch of DLC was the Champions Trials.
The Trials of the Sword.
Trials of the Sword. Yeah. I was not really looking forward to that one. I was kind of like thinking I wouldn't like it, and then I played it, and I ended up really liking it for whatever reason. And this one's kind of the reverse, where I was like really looking forward to this. And I was slightly overwhelmed. It's still fun. I'm still glad I had it.
Yeah, it's more Zelda.
If you liked Zelda and you did not get enough Zelda, you should definitely play this. So don't take it that way. But it's just like maybe I was building up too much in my head because like Zelda's my favorite game this year and all that.
I think I enjoyed it more than you two just because I feel like I had more stuff in the world to do. So like that reminder of like here's a new area you haven't seen before. Like doing some of that stuff and just getting distracted, I think is sort of a big motivator as to why they split it up. And I like the idea of having a focus quest because, I mean, the alternative was to just put 16 new shrines in the world and not tell you where they are so you can go out and find them. So I think it's a good midpoint. And like just doing that stuff, those activities and figuring out how to get them to the shrines to come out, I thought was pretty fun.
Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.